Conservation is getting nowhere because it is incompatible with our Abrahamic concept of land. We abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. When we see the land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect. There's no other way for land to survive the impact of mechanized man, nor for us to reap from it the aesthetic harvest it is capable, under science, of contributing to culture.
I don't know about you, but I always carry a knife. It doesn't matter what the situation is, I'm always reaching for a blade. Whether I'm out hunting in the backwoods, fishing on lakes and rivers, or simply cutting rope at camp. And when I need a tool, I want something that's quality, durable, and handmade right here in the USA. I know that's something you're looking for as well, so go to maloneknives.com and get yourself something that's going to last and look damn good too. This is the Aptitude Outdoors Podcast, where we interview travelers, explorers, and outdoorsmen and women to bring you the best tips and stories from around the world. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Aptitude Outdoors Podcast. Thanks for tuning back in. Today I have a very special guest, someone I've known for quite a while now, the one and only Kim Kaseman. Kim, how are you doing this morning?
Paul, I'm excellent, and I'm so excited to be here knowing that Aptitude Outdoors is still up and running and going strong, especially with your stronger conservation message.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
It's been about 5-6 years now I've been doing this, and finally people are starting to listen to it, I think.
That's a good thing.
So I don't know for 100% accuracy, but in my mind, I'm like 99% sure. The first time I ever met you, whether you knew it or not, was in the middle of the woods at Oak Openings. I was training for my thru hike, and someone that, in my mind, is definitely you, walked up to me on the trail and started talking because I was carrying a backpack, and you're like, oh, what are you doing? And you're the only person I know that would stop in the middle of a trail and have a 20-minute conversation with someone about hiking.
I have goosebumps, and I probably saw you with the backpack, and I asked you what you were
Trekking
training
poles.
for.
Yep.
Yes.
And you introduced me to your friend who had thru hiked, and I was nervous and basically peeing my pants before I went, and you gave me your phone number, and we talked, and she kind of calmed me down a little bit. So that is my first recollection of meeting you, probably bordering on a decade ago at this point. I mean, how long ago was that? Probably 2 years before I did the AT. So
what year did you do your thru hike?
15.
Okay.
So it probably would have been the year before or even a little before that. So maybe...
Clinker did hers in 2013. So if Cheryl McCormick, known as Clinker on the Trail, was with me, that would have been it. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that is my first time meeting you, whether you know it or not. I'm like almost guarantee that it was you. It couldn't have been anybody else because nobody ever talks to you out there. Everybody's with their head down and they're just going through their thing. So that was a long time ago, and then we have a lot of friends in common. You've worked at the parks. Good friends with my friend Bill Heflin, who's been on the podcast. I do all my hunting and fishing with around. So you just got back from a section hike of the Appalachian Trail, which you adore. You're a huge fanatic of the Appalachian Trail. So what was it like out there? I have not been on the Appalachian Trail or a true backpacking trip for maybe a year or two now. So what was the experience like?
It was great because unlike when I went in May to Georgia, the bubble was gone. So ran into a gal who was in fact going to finish her thru hike. She did a flip-flop, and she was going to finish at Harper's Ferry the next day after we ran into her on the trail. And I was just like, my friend, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so exciting. We're so excited for you. I said, I want to be there slapping high fives on the bridge with you. And she goes, you guys just made my whole day. She goes, the last 2 months have been just hellish for her.
Yeah, I bet.
And so we were running into more section hikers and a few southbounders, but it was much quieter in West Virginia and Maryland than what Georgia was back in May. So
you finished that, you said 3 states, right?
Yes.
So far, which 3 states are you?
Well, I finished Georgia in May, and then West Virginia and Maryland are now complete. So I can say I've done 3 states, but I have been in all 14. So
what's the next one? What's the next one you're chipping off?
I think Massachusetts. I'd like to start at Bennington, Vermont, or just south, and finish that. I had tried my first 50-mile section a number of years ago, and 6 3/4 miles shy of hitting that 50-mile mark and staying at Upper Goose Pond, which I have always heard is like the best place to stay on the whole trail. Missed out. So I will end that hike at Upper Goose Pond, actually walk out at Lee the next day. But yeah, so I think that's what's up next.
All right.
Sometime next summer.
So you are involved in a lot of stuff. You and I are similar in that we just don't care what we're doing. We like to be outside. You're into hunting. You're into backpacking. Definitely into conservation, which are all things that I absolutely love. So what got you into hunting? Because I personally, and I don't know if this is true for you, I have a hard time finding other people that hunt around here, or at least that are willing to teach or go out hunting with you or kind of show you the ropes. And that's what Bill and I have been doing for the years, kind of slowly teaching each other a little bit here and there. But what got you into hunting? Because especially hunting is seen as like a masculine thing. So how did you get involved with it?
Way back in 1993, I had a sister who moved to Kansas, and my husband goes, "We're going to go pheasant hunt in Kansas." I'm like, okay, what do we have to do? I was all about it as a kid. I had an uncle who hunted, and my mom took me into my aunt and uncle's house. She says, "Don't look at what Uncle Jim's doing." Well, he was cleaning a rabbit on the dinner table, and I wanted to be, elbow in guts with him, and they wouldn't allow it. And my family just didn't hunt at all. And so I had to kind of come along at a later time in my life and got into it and loved it. And first hunting I ever did was pheasant hunting. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's not even a native bird.
Yeah.
So you can always think of that as being a strike for conservation right there. But it was always my first love was upland hunting, where it's active. Ohio hunting, you're kind of always sitting waiting for game to come to you. You're not out on the stalk. You're not out pursuing it. And the podcast will be proof I don't sit still well. The chair's going, the feet are going, the hands are going at all times. So it's very difficult to sit and wait for stuff to come to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, the 1993 was my first event. And shortly after that, our son was old enough to start with the youth mentor hunt that a friend of ours told us about through the Wood Lucas Pheasants Forever chapter. Okay. And then I was hooked. When dove hunting opened in Ohio, I was like, there's places to dove hunt. And I knew people through school where I was a mean old lunch lady for a number of years at St. Joe's Mommy. Shout out to any of my lambs that might be out there. Knew people that had property and let me come over and put the bang on some doves. So
beautiful. Yeah. And I had my first upland hunting experience and waterfowl hunting experience last weekend, and I loved it. It is so. Duck hunting is more of the sit and wait kind of deal, right, which is similar to deer hunting, but the upland hunting is, I love it. It's strenuous. It's, basically busting brush all day, and you have to be really fast. You have to be really quick on your heels. And I am more of a bow person. I love shooting my bow. It's kind of like a meditative part of my day. So shooting a shotgun is a little more not my style, but I went and I prepared as best I could. I went to the shooting range, trap and skeet, did terrible. Managed to pull one bird, and I was happy with that.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the things that I've found with hunting and fishing is having a good group of people who are willing to show you around makes a world of difference. The guys there were just as happy that I got a bird because they could shoot them all day. This is what they do. Right. The guy has dogs he trains 20 hours a week. He's like, I could shoot all of these birds right now. So to let them show a new guy around, that's what's awesome. And I think that's what's so important about building a really good hunting community too, is whether it's generational, passing it down, or whether it's getting new people involved and setting them up for success and letting them have the trophy and the glory and all that stuff is really important, because that's how people like you and me can spread that conservation message. Oh, by the way, don't do that. because it's not in good practice or maybe potentially illegal,
Right, so. Leave no trace. And certainly to be an ethical hunter is my number one. I hate slob hunters. I hate people who break the rules. I dislike poachers. I know hate is a strong word, but you know what? Don't get me fired up about poaching.
Yeah.
I watched every episode of Northwood's Law.
Uh-oh, we're all in trouble.
Every other person in Maine seems like a poacher. No, I shouldn't say that.
You're the last person I would want on my case. Dangerous. But I think, I think on that note, I did see a lot of the public land around here is very limited. There are some parks that you can hunt, whether it's through a lottery or some of the Wood County parks. I found that there's areas that allow hunting. And we were out scouting the other day, and we literally did not make it 30 yards in the woods, and there was a giant bait pile. And the rules explicitly state in their hunting bait things, and there's a cell cam, and I'm just like...
Right.
Yeah, maybe they don't know. Maybe they didn't read the rules, but it's stuff like that. You see that, and you're like...
Did you go make faces in the cell cam? Yeah.
Flash the big Wood County Parks badge. but that stuff does get frustrating. But it's an educational experience too. You don't always want to just nail people and gotcha. I mean, maybe people, they need to learn too. And I'm not a big proponent of just like giving people the throwing the book at them every time they screw up, because a lot of times maybe they don't know. And they do that a lot on Northwood's Law. They're hey, maybe you didn't know, maybe you did. But like you're getting your warning. They
give a lot of benefits of the doubt on those programs. Yeah. But,
so what's your favorite, locally here in Northwest Ohio, what's your favorite game to go after? I know you do a lot of goose hunting.
Back with a shotgun, baby. And I was standing there waiting for doves to come in, but my biggest thing was, where are the geese? And 200 or so, maybe more, piled into the field I will be sitting next to on Saturday morning.
All right.
And then I'm going to throw some decoys 100 or 200 yards behind me where the pond is, and I hope they lift off the field and come over and loaf by the pond later in the day. So it's got to be goose. Field hunting geese is just to see them come in, kind of tipping in as you're sitting there in the heart.
Yep.
The deer gets it going too, for sure. But I was off shotgun for quite a while. I was trying to decoy the geese and shooting them with my bow once they're on the ground. And it was very frustrating because it was tough to get a good, clean, fast kill with a bow and arrow.
Yeah.
Of all things, you can take down a deer easier with a bow than you can with a goose, because a deer has a much larger kill zone. And that was tearing me up. So I did find a shotgun that's got less recoil. I don't know if I had some eye issues that caused me to get off the shotgun for a while. So.
I was asked recently, what does the outdoors mean to you? To me, the outdoors is everything. It's like the growth model that consumes the entrepreneur, or the unending drive that pushes the athlete to outperform the competition. It's the greatest teacher of life lessons, whether it be learning to accept that most things are out of your control, or that the trees, the rivers, the mountains move along whether you're there or not. It's the motivator that keeps me accountable to my physical and mental health, because if I don't have the strength and conditioning to do the things that I enjoy outdoors, whether they be hunting, fishing, backpacking, adventure racing, or tackling some long distance adventures, then everything becomes exponentially more difficult. Most importantly, the outdoors allows me to be, to think, to exist in the same plane that the majority of the natural world still exists in, to break the bonds from what we call civilization. The outdoors is freedom, a place where life and death are one and the same, the prime example of what it means to exist. In my mind, there's no separation. The outdoors simply is, as all things should be, perfection in its most chaotic form. The outdoors is you, it's me, it's all of us. So we're here to talk about Aldo Leopold and his amazing work. I mean, legendary conservationist, probably the father of wildlife management. Yeah. And you are involved in a lot of things. You're involved in a lot of conservation efforts. You worked in the parks for quite a few years.
Right.
What's so special to you?
Pheasants Forever, Ducks Unlimited, all of those kinds of things.
Yep.
And then the Pheasants Forever introduced me to the Leopold Education Project.
Leopold Education Project.
And I'd already always heard of a book called A Sand County Almanac, but I had never read A Sand County Almanac until, probably around 2015.
Really?
Yeah. And as you can see, it's like a preacher's Bible, baby. It's got, a lot of pages marked and written in, and notes. And the way it's written is difficult to read because it's not a novel.
Yes.
It's his feelings and observations, and he was a keen observer of the natural world. And he's a very thoughtful and provocative writer.
Yes.
So it's very chewy, and you can only take a little bite at a time and chew it for a while. But the way it's broken down into month chapters, I love it.
Yes.
And the different sketches, and I love it that you were hunting under dogs, because I'm going to read one of the quotes today that I really love from Aldo Leopold. But all of his conservation work, I mean, he grew up as a kid on the Mississippi River, going out, turning over logs with his dad, and then he went to the forestry school of Yale University. He was like 16 when he went off to Yale, I think, to learn how to be a forester. And then he spent a few years down in the Southwest, the Gila Wilderness. He was key in getting that saved as a forest wilderness area. Can't think of the other place. Arizona and New Mexico are two of the places that he did a lot of work. And then came up and worked for the University of Wisconsin in their forest products division for a while, and then teaching ecology, which is kind of something he coined, and wrote a book about, the first book on game management.
Yep.
And a lot of people still, as long as the 2000s. He wrote it in 33, I think, and in the 2000s, that was still the go-to game management book.
Yeah.
So, but one of the things that led him to this, sitting and thinking about these things in his older age, goes back to a time that he and some buddies shot a wolf.
Yes.
Okay? And
Love this
I would
story.
yes. I shed a lot of tears when I read Leopold. But I'm going to go ahead and read. In those days, we had never heard of passing up a chance to kill a wolf. In a second, we were pumping lead into the pack, but with more excitement than accuracy. How to aim a steep downhill shot is always confusing. When our rifles were empty, the old wolf was down, and a pup was dragging a leg into impassable slide rocks. We reached the old wolf in time to watch a fierce green fire dying in her eyes. I realized then, and have known ever since, that there was something new to me in those eyes, something known only to her and to the mountain. I was young then and full of trigger itch. I thought that because fewer wolves meant more deer, that no wolves meant hunter's paradise. But after seeing the green fire die, I sensed that neither the wolf nor the mountain agreed with such a view. And this is what he was thinking about in the 40s as he's writing this from years ago. Since then, I have lived to see state after state extirpate its wolves. I have watched the face of many a newly wolfless mountain and seen the south-facing slopes wrinkle with a maze of new deer trails. I've seen every edible bush and seedling browsed first to anemic desuetude and then to death. I have seen every edible tree defoliated to the height of a saddle horn. Such a mountain looks as if someone had given God a new pruning shears and forbidden him all other exercise. In the end, the starved bones of the hoped-for deer herd, dead of its own too much, bleach with the bones of the dead sage or molder under the high-lined junipers. I now suspect that as a deer herd lives in mortal fear of its wolves, so does a mountain live in mortal fear of its deer. So also with cows. The cowman who cleans his range of wolves does not realize that he is taking over the wolf's job of trimming the herd to fit the range. He has not learned to think like a mountain. Hence we have dust bowls and rivers washing the future into the sea. Mm-hmm. So that was the point at which he's looking back on these things and writing these sketches, and that was the turning point of him to become more of a conservationist. Even though he was working in the forestry, a lot of it was chop down the trees to get the products, not necessarily keeping it together, but he was developing his land ethic at that point, and that's what Leopold's been all about. And the Leopold Education Project is trying to get educators to get children to observe their natural world, because how can you fall in love with something that you don't know? And that's what the Leopold Education Project is all about. So I have done workshops for educators, formal classroom educators, and parks people, scout leaders, all kinds of awesome people. And it's a wonderful outdoor curriculum, but the cool part about it is it comes attached with the literacy component of the book. So,
and it's so, his writings are so, they're poetic and they're very deep, but they're also relatable. I mean, you don't have to have a master's degree in English to understand his writing. He's just, the way he phrases things and the way he like kind of plays with words. Sometimes you're just like, damn, this guy's so smart.
It is.
And he's just like, he's a genius. And one of the points in that specific passage right there that really has always stood out to me is like, a lot of places have issues with overpopulation, whether it's elk, whether it's deer, and they also still have this negative view on wolf. Predators always get a bad rap, and it's understandable. I mean, they're the big, scary, bad guys. We've demonized them over the centuries.
Absolutely.
But, you know, I've said this before on the podcast, like bring the damn wolves back down here in Ohio and the bears and all that stuff. But people are so against it. And then they complain that their gardens are getting eaten. And it's like, and then they complain that people are hunting and they hate hunters. And it's like, you can't have it all ways. Something's got to die. And it's either going to be the wolves or us doing it, you know?
Right.
So I think
or your garden.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one of the things that I always find is like ironic about whether I understand why people can be anti-hunting, because it's just like they love animals, and I get it, and it makes sense. But there's also a reality to it of like population control, and we've screwed up the ecology so badly as human beings that it's like you gotta pick one. You can't have it all the way around. You can't have your cake and eat it too, so they say. So I mean, he saw that a long time ago, before people were even thinking about this. That's why he's the godfather of this whole movement.
Absolutely. You know? He is, yeah. And, you know, he went on to teach at the University of Wisconsin, and the ecology classes that he taught, he took his classes outside. They have an entire prairie system on the grounds of the University of Wisconsin, because he and his group were like the wild ones of Ohio. They would go out and rescue the plants that were getting ready to be plowed under, and put them in a place where they could be watched. You know, they could grow, and people could then get the benefit of seeing those as the native plants of Ohio.
Could you imagine trying to do
Wisconsin? I'm sorry.
Could you imagine doing all that before? Like, there's no YouTube. There was no resources other than like maybe his school at Yale for forestry, which they're probably just teaching techniques on how to manage forests a little bit here and there, or how to cut or whatever. I don't know what they would teach.
Managing forest fire.
Yeah. So it's like he basically had to figure it out over decades and decades of what worked, what didn't work.
Exactly.
Now we go to a workshop, or we go to YouTube, or we read a book, and we're like, oh, I have all this information at my fingertips. But yeah. Like, what a visionary person to be able to do that. And think of how much patience that would take.
Absolutely.
You had to be patient as hell.
Once they moved to Madison to work at the university, he had a house in town, but he was looking for some property. And he did his own ecological experiment on this 60 acres of worn out farm that he bought after a guy who was actually a bootlegger who couldn't pay the taxes abandoned it, and the bootlegger left it, burned the house to the ground, but it's exactly what he was looking for. And I've been there, and it's the place where he went home after going walkabout in the country, and he's like, honey, I found our weekend place, and it was an old chicken coop that they called the shack, waist high in chicken dew.
What a lovely home.
That the whole family really fell in love with, and they would, you know, even as teenagers, and I've heard some of his children speak of the love for the shack and the area that they restored, it is almost like walking right through oak openings.
Yeah.
Yes. Most of the plants that you would recognize being in the sandy area, the sand counties of along the Wisconsin River are very much like our oak openings region here with the glacial sand.
Just right across the lake, really. It's not too
absolutely
far. Not too bad. But yeah, the legacy he left behind is awesome. I mean, he's just a true visionary. So I see you have some posters here. What are you going to teach us a little bit here about?
Yeah, some of his most important quotes about being young and full of trigger itch, I thought, because fewer wolves meant more deer.
Yes.
So that one was kind of cool.
Yes.
The one of his most famous quotes is, how would you like me to do this?
Just read them up.
Okay, there are two spiritual dangers in not owning a farm. One is the danger of supposing that breakfast comes from the grocery, and the other that heat comes from the furnace.
Yes.
And that one I think everybody can kind of relate to. And, I have kids that I've talked to that do not understand that food comes from the ground. They think it comes from an arm that sticks through a car window.
Yeah.
Well,
I want to talk about that for a minute. That's so we've both been involved with mountain mentors and stuff like that in the past, local organization here in the Toledo area. And, you take these kids, it's often, kids with, troubled background, inner city, don't get to go out. And like the whole point of the organization is to show kids there's more out there. Because some people never leave the city limits. And that's just wild to me. I was very lucky to grow up in the middle of nowhere because, you don't get that experience otherwise. And I think one of the coolest things you can do is teach kids about anything outside. It does, sometimes they're amazed by a squirrel. Something so simple. It doesn't have to be gigantic, big game. It doesn't have to be the most epic wildlife. Taking kids out into the woods and being like, look at these cool flowers, dude. They only grow in this mountain. Isn't that wild? Or take them to a mountaintop and you're see 50 miles or something insane before it just blends off into the distance. Like a lot of these kids.
That was mind-boggling. I got to go on my first Mountain Mentors trip this year.
Yeah.
And it was mind-boggling for these young people.
Mm-hmm.
But trying to get them out, even locally, and do so with confidence and to lose that fear they have of being out of doors, it's stunning how many, even if they have been to the park, it might have been to the playground, it might have been to the picnic area, but they were fearful to go on the actual trails in the woods.
Yeah, and it's funny because one of my favorite things we ever did with the kids, we did a camp out just to kind of get them used to camping before the trip into the White Mountains. Go out into the woods at night, hike a trail at night. We stop in the middle of the trail, everybody turns their headlamps off, and they are terrified. And they're like, whoa, there's bears. I'm like, this is Northwest Ohio, there's no bears. There could be bears where we're going. That's a real thing. And you just talk them through it. And it's like, there's nothing out here that can hurt you. It's totally okay. And then just like that, to me, that's a teaching moment. Like, have you ever just sat, it's quiet. There's no cars honking their horns. There's owls in the distance. What's that? What's that? That's an owl. Like, what better scenario to teach a kid to not be scared of the woods? And they totally change after that. It might not be a lasting lifetime change, but for some of these kids, it is. Some of these kids go on to do outdoors careers, and it's really awesome to see.
Awesome.
And like that's ground level conservation work right there. Because if you can get the kids to care, they're going to have at least a minor ethic in the long run. So that quote right there, I've lived that quote, and it's so true.
Exactly.
Yep.
And then the land ethic that Leopold always talked about was a continual striving for, because you never really could hit the perfect balance of it. Yes. But if people in thinking communities could talk about it and discuss it and try to make some changes and tune it up. But the problem then is how to bring about a striving for harmony with land among a people, many of whom have forgotten there is any such thing as land, among whom education and culture have become almost synonymous with landlessness. This is the problem with conservation education. So that's one for sure.
Yeah, that's, and a lot of the stuff around everywhere in the U.S. now is just places that We grew up and we would drive. When I was very little, we lived in like Toledo, in like a little kind of suburb in the Holland area. And we would drive, and I remember my dad, we'd drive through, this used to be a field, this used to be woods, this used to be a field. And then to see the places now that I start doing that, that's really disconcerting. Like, oh, this used to be a field, and now this is a carryout. Now this is a strip mall. Oh, they put up 8 subdivisions in here. And like, I used to kind of be not against, but like confused by like when the parks buy up the land and all these areas. I'm like, people need places to live and blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, there are plenty of places to live. We need to do better with managing like old abandoned stuff, or building upward rather than outward, and sprawl. And we need to conserve more land, because once it's gone, it doesn't come back.
No.
Once it's gone, it can. Metro Parks have restored some like prairies and wetlands and stuff, but I mean, that's millions and millions and millions of dollars to do that kind of stuff.
Well, a lot of time. I mean, a lot of oak openings excuse me, I'm stepped right on you.
No.
A lot of oak openings used to be old farmsteads.
Yep.
And they've combined all of those now into the more natural native area. So.
Yeah, and it's kind of scary to think, because I was down in Dallas-Fort Worth area this past year for the Hunt Fish Podcast conference, and the sprawl, there's no skyscrapers out there really, unless you're like dead center of the city. I mean, they have like the big populace, but it is all single family homes just forever. Those cities out there just sprawl and sprawl and sprawl. You can drive through a city out there for 2 hours.
And you can see so far, because they don't have the trees like we do here that kind of block the view. So it really is more powerful to see it out there. But have you been to Waterville lately?
Yeah.
Something that really warmed my heart. My daughter graduated in 2011. And one of the times I was picking up some of the tennis team girls and driving them home, another housing development was going in. I'm like, oh, out on Dutch Road. It used to be all corn, like the I-80 song through Iowa?
Yeah.
All right, so it was corn or beans every year, and it warmed my heart when one of the young ladies goes, but all these are going to be houses? I go, yeah, within the next 4 or 5 years, probably, 10 for sure. She goes, I'm going to miss the corn. So thank you, Jenny. That did my heart good to hear you say that years ago.
Yeah.
So, and it is now, in 11 years, I would say 85% of what we had seen as all corn is now housing.
It's hard because like people do need places to live, but it's like, do we need to continually build subdivisions and subdivisions and subdivisions until eventually it's all just going to run into each other. There's going to be nothing left, it feels like, at some point. So I don't know. I worry about that kind of stuff. It feels like someday there's just going to be a collapse, and we're going to be like, we can't sustain, like there's not enough resources on Earth to keep this going forever. I mean, maybe some CEO that's never stepped foot outside in their life is in some skyscraper in New York City is out there thinking like unlimited growth forever. Like, that's not possible. We have limited resources. So that stuff does worry me. It's really scary to think about. I mean, it's easy to cushion yourself from that living in the cornfields of Ohio, or because we're on the outskirts of this stuff. Even Toledo's not that big of a city. I mean, you drive 15 minutes in any direction, you can usually hit some corn
somewhere.
Corn.
Right.
So yeah, I do worry about that. So I think that's why stuff like what you're doing is so important, to educate people. Because not everybody's going to be full psychotic into it like you and me. They're not going to be down the rabbit hole forever. But just awareness is important.
Right. Well, we're starting to see, in the last 5 to 10 years, more worry about children and their education and their disconnectedness from the outdoors. The Last Child in the Woods. Mm-hmm.
I've read that one, yeah.
Right, and the disconnectedness from the natural world, because we are all a part of that. Mm-hmm. As I always tell kids, you're as much a part of this natural cycling that's going on as that big pile of deer dung right there, deer scat, and they're like, oh, yuck, but... Well,
I don't want to be extreme. Like, I played video games as a kid. Like, kids should be able to play video games. That's totally fine. But my parents also kicked us out of the house in the middle of the swamp woods we lived in, and we're like, no, you are going to go outside for the rest of the day. And eventually, after 15 minutes of, bitching and crying, we would just wander off into the woods. We wouldn't come back for hours.
Right.
I learned so much about just the outdoors in general, just getting covered in mud and just playing out in the woods as they are.
The poison ivy, the nettles. You learn which things to stay away from.
The mosquitoes.
Climb trees, fall down, get hurt. Oops, don't do that again.
Yep. I remember we would get in so much trouble because my brother and I, we heated our house with wood. So we'd have axes and saws, hammers, nails. And you're little kids. You go out in the woods, we're just wantonly cutting things. And my dad he would not have that. It was like, no. I mean, you get that ethic early on when you screw up.
Well, I have to be at least a generation, if not a generation and a half ahead of you. Mm-hmm. But when I was in kindergarten at Larchmont School, we had a pile of scrap lumber and nails and saws and hammers. And you could play with that and build airplanes and smack your finger and go, I got to get better at doing this. Yep. It hurt. Yeah. Maybe sometimes you got a Band-Aid, sometimes you didn't. But kids need to learn to explore, take chances.
I see that even in the kids in my family. They're just so nervous to try things because I think you get in the cycle where it's like school, home, school, home, school, home, school, home, and they don't have access to a lot of outdoors activities.
Or sports that are not just pickup games in the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. What am I trying? Organized sports.
Yeah, sports, school, home, sports, school, home.
Right.
And they live in this rigid world where it's like everybody's always telling you what to do. You always have a rule that you have to live by. And I'll take them out fishing and stuff. And they're like, I'm like, just do it. Like, there's no rules out here. I mean, there's laws and stuff, but they're little kids. Like, you just do whatever you want. Try it. They'll hand me lures that I know for the situation will never catch a fish. I always tie the lure on because I'm like, this will teach them that maybe this isn't the right one to use. And they're always like, look for validation. And I always try and be like the cool uncle. Like, because they'll like try, kids, they sneak whatever they can get in. They'll try and drop F-bombs and cuss. I was like, you can say whatever you want around me. But if you tell your mom and dad, I'm going to lie my ass off and say I never said you could do that. But I was like you can learn on your own. I don't tell them anything. They catch a fish. What do I do? I'm like, I'll show you one time how to take it off your rod. That's it. After that, it's all on you. Mm-hmm. And they're like, then they really pay attention. And then, I think it's really just important to let kids get dirty and do stuff and maybe break the rules every once in a while, get in trouble.
Yeah. We have 2 forest schools in Toledo now.
2 what?
Forest schools.
What the hell is that?
The kids get dropped off in the morning and they're outside all day.
That's so cool. Is that like a full,
There's one at Sidecut Park, and I can't tell you who runs it, and there's one at Maumee Valley Country Day School.
Is it part of an actual school, like a pre-K
Well, Maumee
through 8th
Valley
grade?
Country Day School has a forest school, and I'm not sure if they run it or who does that, but that might be something to find out about and have a podcast about that because it's very cool. It's like not really curriculum.
Yeah.
To go, and the learning is innate.
Okay.
The kids learn because they're out doing.
That's how it was when I was in grade school. I mean, I lived in Ida, Michigan growing up, and we went to this school called St. Anthony's Catholic School, and they had the biggest playground I've ever seen at a school. It was bordered by woods, and it was just basically a big cut field with a baseball diamond swing sets.
Did you know the school secretary, Beverly Kelly?
No.
Bev Kelly?
My mom was the school secretary when I went there. Okay. That was a terrible time.
Well, I was my kids' mean old lunch lady, okay?
Okay. But, we would go off into the woods, screw around. I didn't realize how awesome it was until I got older. Kids in the inner city, they got a fenced-in
asphalt
little place, and I'm like, we would go in the woods and find dead stuff laying around, and like we didn't know what we were looking at, but we'd go out there and play, have fake guns made out of sticks.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Couldn't do that anymore.
No.
And it was a good time, and I wish more kids got that opportunity, because that's eventually what led me to where I'm at today. Whether I know it or not, I had those experiences. I wasn't scared of the outdoors. Right. I wasn't scared to be out in the woods at dark. It was just like, I live in the woods. It's a thing. Like, I'm not worried about it. Yeah. So, that's pretty awesome. But I have switch topics a little bit. I'm interested to get your opinion on this, because I've talked to this about with my last couple guests, maybe whether it was on record or off record. I don't really remember. But so there's a Pittman-Robertson Act. Mm-hmm. Which basically funds a lot of conservation that goes on, and beating a dead horse. Everybody that is into conservation knows about this. And there's been talk of, amongst some groups of people that I'm involved with, of potentially trying to lobby for and this isn't like a real thing that's going, like, pushing through anything, just talking conversations about why isn't there a tax on all outdoors equipment, tents, backpacks, hiking poles, Patagonia shirts and jackets that people love to spend money on. It's their $300 fluff coats. Do you think that would be something that's reasonable to add to all recreational outdoors? Because I'm a huge recreationist. I backpack, I mountain bike, I kayak, all for enjoyment. I'm outside a lot. Do you think do you think that's off point? Do you think that's too much to ask to maybe do have a tax on that to go towards, whether it's land preservation, whether it's
rails to trails, if you're biking,
stuff like that? Because a lot of that stuff, I'm not sure how the funding model works for the parks. I'm pretty sure it's just all levy based, like passing levies, and they get the money through that, and then grants and things of that nature. Grants. But a lot of like federal and state property and all this conservation work that goes in these big organizations is all funded through hunting. Do you think that's reasonable? Because you are in the same world as me where you do it all. Mm-hmm. Do you think that, because like they're kind of, from my perspective, hikers and stuff are getting a free ride, and they should be contributing a little bit to that pool where to conserve, because they complain about bad trail maintenance and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, it's all volunteer work, essentially. Mm-hmm. I mean, if there was money there, they'd be able to do more with it and conserve more land and fight against clear cutting on the Appalachian Trail, or putting in pipelines, or leveling mountains. That's something that I think about quite a bit. Like, I think everybody, if you're enjoying the outdoors, should have to pay a little bit.
Yeah, pay to play. To a certain point, I can go along with it as long as they're funding it towards the specific things that they say, because people are looking to dip into that.
Yeah. Always.
Other fund to fund other things that are not even related to the outdoors. So, I'm not a big proponent of having to pay more taxes. A little pain for some gain is a good thing, but that is a touchy subject.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's never going to be perfect, because politicians are politicians. I mean, it is what it is. Like, they never have our best interests in mind, is what it usually comes down to. But I think there should, because my main issue that I have is I'm in all of these communities, and I can, like, I'm in the outdoors backpacking and all the rec stuff, and I'm in the hunting communities, and it's like, I know there's a lot of complaining on all ends, but it's like, at least passively, hunters are participating in conservation. Whether they know it or not, whether they actually even give a shit or not, is one thing. But like, what's your $350 backpack going towards? The bottom line of REI or Cabela's or whatever. I mean, they're making that money. I don't know. But I don't know what other options you could have for getting a little bit extra conservation money. Because at the end of the day, it's all money based. It's all based off of who can get the most money. And then that's going to open up more parks for people. That's going to open up land expansion. Land conservancies could use that potentially to buy more land for more people to recreate on. Mm-hmm. And it's also something to be said for places that are just left alone. Habitat for the habitat's sake that would be a good thing too. So in my mind, it's like if you could actually get it to go even at a base level, a minor tax on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because I think that's a fairly good model.
It's just the American model of conservation, just for recreational. There's nothing different about it, but I don't know. It's interesting to think about.
I could kind of get on board with that.
I mean, I don't want more taxes either. I mean, I'm already getting
no, but I don't know that I really realize it when I pay for something. You know, if I go to get another load of arrows at Cabela's or at Bass Pro, whatever. But speaking of Bass Pro, reminds me that the mothership Bass Pro is where it holds the Archery Hall of Fame. And we just talked about that Aldo Leopold was actually inducted into the Archery Hall of Fame in 2013 because he was an archery hunter. And he always said his wife was a better shot than he was, but he made some of his own bows, and those are down at the Bass Pro Mothership, which is in Springfield, Missouri. So
you know Ashley Smith. Her husband, Kyle.
Yes.
He's built his own bow. I didn't know that until a few years ago, and I was like, that is super cool. I'd be terrified it would snap and bust me in the face. I'm not a great craftsman at all.
No, me either.
I just cobble shit together. But so what hasn't Aldo Leopold done? I mean, that's just like he's has the standing he does in the history of this conservation world for a reason. I mean, he's just a visionary kind of person.
Right.
Those people don't come along very often. They're few and far between.
No, and he was very humble about it. In fact, he got called on the carpet by one of his editors and said, this is all kind of nice flowery words you're writing, but you need to take responsibility for killing that wolf. And this was years later because he wrote this. It was the Sand County Almanac was published posthumously. He died in 1948, and it didn't come out until 1949. But he did then rewrite some things and really took the full responsibility that you can read about when you read a Sand County Almanac and some of his other writings. But his family is on board with it. So the Aldo Leopold Foundation has taken over the property that he and his family planted tens of thousands of pines on. They did their own ecological restoration project around the shack. It's now considered an important birding area. One of his children cut pines down to build their home. I think one of his sons, who was in New York, took Leopold pines. They've printed a Sand County Almanac on paper from the Leopold pines. But it's kind of amazing what they've done up there and the conservation work that continues and the internships that they have for people. I want to say, do they do a writer's in the shack, or was that my pipe dream? Was to get a bunch of...
After a while, it all gets mixed together.
Yeah, right. My dream or Aldo's. I want to take credit for it. No. But they do some amazing work up there still. So the Leopold Education Project, which is this curriculum that uses the literacy of a Sand County Almanac and then puts it into a curriculum that's cross-curriculum. You can use it with all STEM, STEAM, STREAM. All of the buzzwords happen in this, and it's really cool. And I love taking that to teachers. So, if there are teachers out there, I can't give you CEUs, but we can give you a certificate that says you've gone through 6 hours of personal development with this training. And if there are teachers that are interested, look me up, I'll hook you up, and we'll do it. It's a 6-hour training, so if you have a personal development day, what do they call those, teacher work day? Be happy to come out myself or with a team of educators and put you through the paces of it. It is an amazing day. You never got the training, did you?
No.
At the Metro Parks?
No.
I'll throw this challenge out to you and see if we can get permission. If I do the training at the Metro, staff training at the Metro Parks, a lot of times they open it up to the Metro Parks volunteers as well. I'd love to have you there so you can see what this is all about, how it works, and why it is so important to get kids outside.
Yes.
But I think it's time for another quote.
Let's hit it.
You said you hunted over dogs.
Hunted over dogs.
You were grouse hunting?
Grouse.
Woodcock?
Woodcock.
Okay. So Red Lanterns is part of the October. This is my quote from there. And these are the activity cards that come with the materials that I give out to the people that take the workshop. My dog persists in tutoring me with the calm patience of a professor of logic in the art of drawing deductions from an educated nose. All right? That's a cool quote.
I love that.
If you were working over dogs and you just see how they work, it's amazing.
It's astounding.
Yeah. And
they
Leopold,
are
right.
So, they just, I don't know how to explain it. I was nervous because I really was scared of like holding a gun with a dog in front of me and shooting a bullet. But it is, if you've never seen a dog work with someone who's trained them well.
It's amazing, isn't it?
And I was lucky enough, I got to work 2 different people, 3 dogs each, and to watch the different ways they train their dogs.
Pointers or flushers, what were you working under?
All of that.
Oh, okay.
One guy was strictly pointers.
Okay.
All he had 3 of the same breed of dog. Well, I don't know if they're all the same breed, but one dog was old, his first dog, trained differently. Mm-hmm. He said he wasn't as, he was new. He was still training it. So it worked completely differently. The second dog, he kind of got to train the way he wanted. It was just old enough to be considered like well-trained and good to go. And that dog was awesome. It worked so well. It stayed very close to you. It kind of worked in this big arc, and it would just stop. And then he'd be like, okay, we're going to go up here. And then the last dog was youngest, and he just wanted to get a little more training hours within it. And watching the dog that's not quite ready, it was just cool to see it all. And then we had the flusher, this big old lab, busted brush, big, dumb, happy dog.
Right, and stuff flies up.
Yes,
it's awesome. So these activity cards use the quote, and then there's an action that you take with your students or whoever you're out on the trail with. Take a walk and describe as many smells as you can. See if you can identify the source of the scent. So I always think being outdoors is very sensual, and I'm all about making kids or anybody I'm out with close their eyes, because then to hear the smell, touching things for sure,
I'll explain the smell that I remember from hunting with dogs just to play the game. It's like wet leaves in the middle of like the cold October air. Just like, if you know that smell.
I got it. It's a sharp, pungent smell.
If anybody's been out there, you're stepping on this mossy, gooey ground. It's got this earthy smell. That's what I think of when I thought of upland hunting. Just wet leaves, cold breeze.
For me, it's more the smell of the grasses, and true. I may get to indulge this very soon in Nebraska.
Uh-oh.
Other sister bought a place in Nebraska because her husband got reconnected to upland hunting in the last couple of years, so they've got a little place out there. So the dog, Great Plains.
The dog, knowing someone with dogs is similar to around here. It's that when they say it's good to have a boat, it's better to have a friend with a boat.
Yes.
It's good to have dogs. It's better to have a friend with dogs.
Exactly.
I don't have the time for that.
Well, they've got dogs. Maisie and Josie have become amazing hunters, and they're out there doing it.
The amount of time that they put into those dogs is so awesome. You have to be. That has to be your thing. If you're a dog hunter, you have to be a dog hunter. That's your world. I'm too ADHD. I can barely focus on one thing for more than a week.
Of what you can do, let alone trying to get a dog to come along with you. Yeah. But a lot of that's bred into them, and you just get them to focus on it, and it sort of comes to them. And it's amazing to have watched his dogs, which were just beyond puppies. They were less than a year old last year, and to hear how they work this year is like, I can't wait to get back out. But I did give my brother-in-law, I texted him last night, since I've been trying to, up my game on my Leopold stuff and refresh myself on it. I said, do yourself a favor. I said, and pull out the October sketches from Aldo Leopold and read them this week, because he goes into so much detail about how the dogs work and all of that, and it's amazing. So the sights, the sounds, the smells of it.
There's a couple of books I'm going to have to recommend to you before we leave. They're on my Kindle because I read them on an airplane once when I was flying to Texas. And they're very much in the essence of Aldo Leopold, the way they're written. But it's like, I don't know, I think you'd enjoy them. I can't remember them right now off the top of my head. I read them a few years ago, but they're really good. And that style of writing is great. I mean, it's like I said earlier, it's flowery, but it's like very impactful. You don't have to be a poet to read it, but it's good stuff.
Nope. And his whole thing about the land ethic, and look at how the emotion that you have talking about the dogs on the hunt. Would it have even mattered if a bird went up? Would it have even mattered if you got off a shot?
Nope.
It's just the sounds, the smells, the sights of seeing that and how it all comes together is amazing. But, okay, so I have another quote that I do like to read because it comes into this whole, helping people get out there to learn it, to love it, and take care of it. Mm-hmm. Conservation is getting nowhere because it is incompatible with our Abrahamic concept of land. We abuse land because we regard it as a commodity belonging to us. When we see the land as a community to which we belong, we may begin to use it with love and respect. There's no other way for land to survive the impact of mechanized man, nor for us to reap from it the aesthetic harvest it is capable, under science, of contributing to culture. So, yes, a little bit deep.
A lot of bit deep.
But so true. Even, how long's he been gone? 48? I can't do math, so.
You're asking the wrong guy. I got an anthropology degree. I can't count past 10.
He's been gone 80 years.
Yeah.
And still as important now as when he wrote these in 1948, 49.
Well, and it's cool to see, too. I mean, I'm kind of, I don't go on public land here in Northwest Ohio that much because all I hear is horror stories. And it's, I need to start exploring more. I am going to start exploring it more. Everybody said stay away from Maumee State Forest during gun week. That's all I've ever heard my whole life. But, it is interesting. You say you got to view these places as community. Mm-hmm. And back to what I experienced last weekend, everybody has their spots they hunt on public land. In Michigan, there's a lot more public land, like exponentially more public land. And you go up there and these guys drive around to their spots that they like to hunt.
They have a lot of walk-in hunting areas?
Yep. You just park on the side of the road, state forest, public land, federal land, stuff like that. And if there's a car there, they just go somewhere else. Because it's like, it's a little dangerous. You don't want to be hunting around other people, and everybody's all amped up when they're hunting. And I'm getting something. But it's like a respect thing. Like, don't come barging in here when there's other people. There's no rules against it.
Right.
You could follow a guy all day. They're not going to be happy. They might punch you in the face.
Remember, he's got a gun in his hand.
Yes. And it's like that sense of like, they might be like, oh, damn it, this guy's in my spot. But it's like the sense of like just letting people do it. There's enough to go around. There's plenty to go around. So it's like that sense of community, I think, gets lacked sometimes. And I don't know, I might just sound like an old person when I say this, is like kids these days, but I see a lot of selfishness now. It's just like, can't we all just, like, there's plenty to go around for everyone. Can't we all just kind of, like, get along and share this, like, gigantic, awesome resource instead of being like, my bird, my deer, well, they're all being protected through everyone's money, so technically, no.
Yeah, right. But, yeah, if you get too many, they used to do a pheasant release in the Turkey Foot area of Maumee State Forest?
Isn't Turkey Foot its own thing? I don't know.
Well, maybe.
They might be owned by the state.
Okay.
All owned by the state.
Okay.
I don't know.
But it's out, like way out in Neowash?
Yeah, it's
maybe?
out by like...
So you know where I'm talking about.
Right past a few miles, maybe it's a mile or so, or a few miles upriver past the Providence Dam. So,
yes.
Yeah, on the north side of the river.
Yes.
I ate lunch there. That's the only reason I remember.
Okay. Well, they used to do a pheasant release there, and there would be so many people there. And these are domestically raised pheasants, and they don't have their outdoor wits about them. You're standing in the parking lot, and here come the pheasants walking right up to the people. It's like, by the time they dropped the gate, the pheasants were gone, but that was just dangerous to be out there. I mean, I had shot rain down on me more than once, and I had a friend. She goes, what? She goes, you're kind of tuned into a few more things than I am. She goes, why do I have all these people getting shot coming to me at St. Luke's ER? I'm like, oh, that might be from the pheasant release, and they haven't done it in a lot of years.
Well, and you can't blame people, too, for herding out into places like that because, again, locally, there's not that much space to go. I mean, Maumee State Forest is big, but it's not that big.
Right. And the state still does the ODNR still does a bunch of pheasant releases. They just don't do them in our area anymore.
I've never even considered doing a pheasant hunt. I don't know. I don't know. I'm like a deer hunter and an angler at heart, traditional Midwestern guy. And I like upland hunting a lot. If there were more opportunities around here, I think I could really get into it.
Yes.
I just don't think I could get a dog. I don't have the patience for that, I don't think. But
no. I mean, you can kick them up here and there.
Yeah.
It's a lot better with a dog.
Bill and I scouting the other day were confident we were going to stir up some woodcock in those woods because the rules they have set are like X days per week, no hunting. So we were scouting during those days. And we didn't see any. I was kind of bummed. I really wanted to see one because it's this. They got their little buzzes going, and I actually saw one on the ground next to a log. The dog pointed at it, and we were close.
Okay.
They're invisible.
Yes.
They're like wearing an invisibility cloak.
Yes, I would agree with that 100%.
Amazing.
Unless somebody's standing there actually pointing at it, or you see it blink an eye.
Yep, invisible.
Absolutely.
You got to be in tune with nature. Let's see. I was going to ask you something, and I completely forgot what it was. It was about. Damn it! I can't remember.
Okay. Hunt, fish. Well, I got to give a shout out. You talked about having mentors to help you learn different things in different ways.
That started off
to hunt. And Joe Dog, who would you rather go learn how to deer hunt than with somebody named Joe Dog? And so he's a friend of a friend, and we were having a birthday celebration somewhere. And I'm like, Joe Dog, take me out and teach me to hunt. So he had gotten in one of the Metro Parks lotteries, and we went out to his property, and he's like, he sent me a bunch of days. I said, out of all of those, I have one day I can hunt. He goes, okay. He goes, I'm going to put you in a ground blind, and this is what to expect, and this is what to listen for, and if anything comes through, he goes, make sure you aim real well, and you know what the distance is, and shoot it. And this is I use a crossbow.
Yep.
So anyways, nothing happened that morning, and we took a break and did some lunch, and he goes, in the afternoon, he goes, I'm going to put you up in the tree stand. Bagged my first deer on the first hunt, and of course, he showed me how to clean it, and he can do a deer in like 5 minutes.
Takes me about a half hour.
Half hour, 45 minutes, but.
I remember what I was going to ask you now. So I'm starting to get into this myself. I went a little gung-ho this year on joining organizations. But I'm very skeptical of joining some, I always try to look into them and get to know people in them before I join, because there's certain organizations I don't want to be associated with personally, and there's some that I think are really doing good work. So why is it important to get involved in the community, I guess, if you're someone like me who's newer? I mean, I know the reasons that I am getting involved in stuff like this now, but for like the general population listening, why is it important to get involved with Ducks Unlimited or any sort of conservation organization?
A lot of the dollars that are generated in those organizations are used back here locally for improvement. And I have had the great fortune to hunt on some Ducks Unlimited public hunting space that was carved out through those dollars. Trying to think where we were on the Colorado River out in Colorado, and it was amazing. Just this beautiful area where you could park and then walk along the river and either set up on the river, or you could jump hunt birds along this little corridor, and it was amazing. So they, a lot of times, Pheasants Forever doesn't call itself a hunting organization. They're a habitat organization. Brother-in-law has 4 acres out in Nebraska. Guess who just put it all into conservation plantings? Pheasants Forever came out and did the work because he's got the dogs and he can hunt, but he doesn't have a plow or a seeder or anything like that, and they've got the equipment. So they came out and put that habitat in, and it's unhuntable property, but they had it farmed. Part of it was farmed, and then the rest of it they wanted to put into conservation pollinator habitat. And Pheasants Forever did that free of charge for that. Well, There might be a fee. I don't want to say they did it free of charge, but
less than doing it yourself, maybe.
Right. I'm trying to remember how that works with Pheasants Forever, so I don't want to quote that but they came out and did it. They did what he wasn't able to do. They did what he wanted to have done with his property.
Okay.
And they did it very timely. He's owned the property for less than a year, and they've gotten this in.
So it sounds like it kind of set up like a land conservancy, like we'll do this, but you just can't go in there and have a ball shooting stuff all day if you want to.
Well, even you can hunt stuff that they do, but he's in city limits, and so his property is in town. But that's okay. They are farming a part of it in non-GMO alfalfa, and the other part is in pollinator native habitat.
That's awesome.
Just so it's there.
That's my goal someday. Get a property either up in northern Michigan or somewhere around here and just convert it all into habitat. I want to do that so badly. That's why I'm learning about it now.
Right,
so when the time comes, I'm ready to do it.
Yeah. Back to Aldo.
Yep.
Not only did he restore all of that property, but he and his family were prodigious note takers and phenologists. So they would know about what day of every year every plant on their property should be blooming, and they still keep those records. Wow. First bird, he would go out in the mornings with his dog and his coffee pot and sit and write and listen and take notes about what was going on, and those have been extremely important notes to track, has there been climate change? Mm-hmm. And has there been the birds come back? A lot of the birds that come back up here do so more instinctively. They say some's photo period, but if they're down at the equator, they've got 12 hours of each no matter what.
Yeah.
But at the time that they come back, the hatch out of a lot of caterpillars and larvae is not meshing. It's been prior to when the birds come back, and when the birds come back, they're not finding those hatch outs, which have been important fuel for the birds to get the rest of the way north. So
scary.
There has been some of that
scary
noted.
Stuff.
Yeah, and because they restored that and it's become an important birding area, and the notes that they have taken, they're off by a week to 2 weeks on some of that they have noticed. So
that's disheartening, to say the least.
A little bit.
Yeah, I've read some stuff about that too, with all sorts of migrations, and I think we even have to deal with that here locally with the blue lupin and the Carter blue butterfly. Sometimes the stuff's not meshing up, and they're like endangered. So it's kind of stuff like that. Even at a local level is kind of scary sometimes to think about. I mean, the climate's a scary thing to mess with because it controls a lot of how things operate, and things off by a week, that could kill millions of birds. Mm-hmm. That's scary to think about. But before we wrap up, the funny thing, we're talking about deer hunting. You actually were there and got the heart of the first deer I ever killed. I don't know if you remember that. You drove to my house and you helped us haul it out.
Yeah, I do remember that.
And that was a fun experience, and it spoiled me. And it was, in a lot of ways, that's like just solidified my passion for hunting and fishing and all of that stuff.
Yeah, foraging for your own food. Yep. It's amazing.
And that was such a experience, because that was the first time I've ever gone out and hunted that period, that week. I think that was my third time sitting, or second. It was during bonus gun weekend, and it was a pretty good-sized buck. It wasn't like a world record setting, but it was like a 4-year-old. He had pretty decent-sized rack on him. First deer ever. So now my bar had been set so high. I was like, this is great. I'm going to come out here every year and do this. This will be no problem. Hunting's easy. Right. So fun. I didn't see a deer for 4 years out there. I did. I missed a bunch of shots because I just like beginner's luck.
Oh, right.
Like the first woodcock I got last weekend. First shot I've ever taken in the woods, upland hunting, got a bird. Like, it's easy.
You let instinct take over.
And the second shot, missed. Third shot, missed. The guy told me I was batting 1,000 for about an hour.
Yeah.
And then my stats dropped real quick. So, that was a fun experience, and it's funny because you were there. I think one of the first times I ate weird, quote unquote, weird wild game was when you brought it to the Metro Parks too. You brought like antelope sausage or something and goose And I was like,
I had antelope once.
Yep.
And yeah, I did all kinds of crazy stuff with goose.
So you randomly introduced me a lot of this stuff and you probably didn't even know it.
Wow. How about that?
You took the heart of my first deer though, because I was like, I'm not eating that.
I did, and
That's
I
not
cooked it,
happening
and
again.
I thank you. No,
They're so good.
No, it is. Yeah.
I love it.
Yep.
I haven't tried the liver yet. I have to do it because everybody says you have to.
I need to try the liver too, but I want to try it the way we do the elk out west. Make it into pate.
Whichever one of us gets a deer first this year, I will do that with you.
Okay. Well, I actually have a liver in my freezer. I just haven't done it, and I need to because it needs to be out of the freezer.
I'll be there.
All right.
Let's set a date. We should have done it live on this show right now.
There you go. Yeah, sample the deer pate because elk pate is phenomenal.
Oh, I bet.
So it's a real mild liver.
Well, before we wrap up, I know you're not big on social media and stuff, but if you want to let people know maybe where they can learn more about the Aldo Leopold stuff and what you're doing or anything that you're working on or organizations you're involved with where they can learn more, that would be awesome because I'm always trying to get educated people on, how they can get involved in conservation.
Super. I love it. I will give you a picture of my business card that has to do with Leopold. Call me, email me, text me if you don't hear back from me within 24 hours on an email, text because you've gone into the spam world. So, and I'm the Bermuda Triangles of electronics.
Yeah.
So I'm surprised all your equipment's still working. If it comes out blank when we're done, wouldn't surprise me a bit.
Well, Kim, I want to thank you so much. It's been awesome catching up.
Yes, I appreciate the opportunity.
Interweave every once in a while. We end up in the same places, but thanks for the work you're doing. It's really important. You've dedicated your life to this stuff, so I think it's really awesome.
Well, I appreciate that, Paul. Thank you. And thank you, Aptitude Outdoors, for having me on. This has been a blast.
Absolutely.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out this episode. If you feel like you're getting something out of it, go down in the link below and buy me a coffee. The Aptitude Outdoors podcast is fully self-funded by me. So if you're digging it, I'm just throwing out a tip jar, and I appreciate you listening.